Hello everyone, thanks for joining me. Today we'll be discussing how Starflight would react in the video game Phasmophobia. Welcome to Wings of Fire vs Gaming, where we take Wings of Fire characters and shove them into a gaming scenario. As always, we need limitations so the scenario doesn't get out of hand. If you don't want to listen to the rules, skip to the timecode to get straight into the content. First off, the character in question must be alone. After all, we're analyzing what specific characters would do in these scenarios. Secondly, we must specify the character's version. As an example, Sanami meeting her mother is a different version of Sanami. Before she meets Queen Coral, we don't know that she's killed her father, Gil, in the arena. Finally, the character must gain something from the scenario. For someone to go through an experience, they must change by the end of it. If they didn't, then what's the point of the entire thing? To preface this analysis, we know that Starflight is not the bravest dragon in the world, but he is very inquisitive. In the Wings of Fire world, we're given very little information about the paranormal. What if Starflight could discover information about ghosts and Phasmophobia? Later in the analysis, I'll talk about Starflight's vision impairment and how it will affect his investigation. For the uninitiated, Phasmophobia is a 4-player horror investigation game. The goal of the game is to find evidence to triangulate what type of ghost you are dealing with. You must use different types of equipment to collect the evidence. Guessing the correct ghost rewards the player with monetary bonuses. Although this is a 4-player game, Starflight going through this alone would be an interesting experience. We've already seen Starflight perform without the aid of his friends, so we know he's completely capable. It would be interesting to see him by himself again, but this time in a paranormal setting. Now let's look at the character himself. Starflight's bravery is not one of his most highlighted attributes. In fact, some of his character arc is building the confidence to do unimaginable things. We also know that he's an inquisitive dragon who would give anything to learn more about anything. If Wings of Fire doesn't have any scrolls about ghosts, Starflight going through the perils of Phasmophobia would make for an interesting experience. In this case, Darkstalker doesn't count. His story passed down through generations, but he never really manifested into a ghost to haunt dragons. This is because he was still alive, just buried underneath the earth. Personally, I haven't read anything yet about scrolls having information about ghosts or how to document ghosts. Starflight living this experience could push scientists to investigate the paranormal. Something that should be considered is his lack of vision after his novel. Blind Starflight would have an incredibly difficult time trying to gain information. Most of the evidence in this game is seen by the player, but because we are confining only one dragon to these scenarios, it might be better to have the scenario set before he is visually impaired. Now that we know which Starflight we're dealing with, let's see how he'll fare in the game setting. In the game itself, Starflight would definitely be terrified of each setting. An abandoned school in the middle of nowhere, a creaky old farmhouse, the solitary confinement of asylums. I can just imagine the desolate halls of a dragon asylum, hearing echoes of the Great War as he walks past each door. These settings would have to be at dragon scale. I believe that Starflight would have the courage to enter these settings because the reward of knowledge would be invaluable. He would probably comment about having Clay or Sanami with him to make things more comforting. But his friends handling unknown equipment could cause some issues. Some items could break, or some equipment could just be used carelessly. Going in alone ensures that he's in full control of the investigation, using whatever items necessary to conclude the ghost's type. In Phasmophobia, there are several types of ghosts, each with their own special ability and behavior. For instance, the demon is the most aggressive ghost, but fears a crucifix in its vicinity. A poltergeist moves objects around more than any other ghost. The game features many ghost types for player discovery. Not only would Starflight be learning about ghost types, but he would learn how to detect the apparitions. Phasmophobia uses a lot of electronic gadgets. Although it may be confusing at first, Starflight handling these items would make his neurons fire. He might ask, how does this work? What's its purpose and the benefit? After he finds out how to operate the human-based tools, he could potentially replicate it in his own world. For example, the Spirit Box is effectively a radio to contact ghosts, a very robust medium of real-time communication. In Wings of Fire, during war times, messengers had to travel long distances to deliver a message. That act would be trivialized just by using a simple radio. Of course, Starflight would need to design some sort of receiver and antenna system, but that's all part of the research. That's only one of the many equipment types in the game, by the way. I know fully well that Starflight would see the use in each gadget and try to fabricate it in his world. All in all, Starflight going on this horrifying expedition would yield many technological advancements for his world. Other than developing his knowledge, why else would Starflight be going into such a dangerous scenario? Well, we've already touched on the spirit box being reverse engineered to be a radio. That type of long distance communication would really speed up messages being sent and received. With an unseen threat constantly being around the corner, this forces Starflight to come out of his comfort zone in order to get the information he needs. Being subjected to these horrifying scenarios will allow him to conduct in an orderly manner without having to consider whether the task is scary. He'll still be able to operate with less fear than he did before. Of course, Starflight will still need to be rational when making decisions. I argue that Starflight would consider more outlandish ideas his friends make, but still think about the consequences of their actions. To add on his improved courage, he could potentially seek out other dangerous tasks to conduct experiments on. Instead of being confined by his fearful demeanor, he can investigate other entities in his world. Who knows, he can find out how animus dragons are born and how animus magic works, before it's taken away. Animus magic can be pretty scary if it's in the wrong hands, so having a responsible dragon investigate it would make for a positive outcome. Ultimately, Starflight and Phasmophobia would make for a very intriguing combination. It's definitely a plausible interaction, which can yield many positives for the Nightwing. Not only would he be braver, but he could discover many more things with his added bravery. This means he can learn to act more independently like his friends, instead of having to rely on Clay or Tsunami to protect him. And that's Wings of Fire vs. Gaming. How do you think Starflight would react in Phasmophobia? And what character in game do you want me to investigate next? Let me know in the comments. I appreciate your support, and as always, thanks for listening. So when I was first making this video, I wanted to voice Starflight going into these locations and figuring out what the ghost type was. But when I tried to do it, I wasn't happy with the voice that I gave Starflight. And also I was thinking, if I'm gonna be doing this for other characters, I can't do a female voice. So when that hit me, I was just thinking to myself, oh, I guess I'll just do an analysis. Have a character in a video game and see how they would basically react to all the different features and the setting. Yeah, I think it's really interesting how Starflight would be going into a particular scenario, mainly because of the amount of information and knowledge he can gain from it. But the caveat is that he has to push his boundaries of not being scared. And that was a really big part of his character arc, is that he needed to be more brave, or he wanted to be more brave in order to kind of save himself and his friends. That was just really interesting to me. Anyways, I won't keep you guys here for longer. Thank you all for watching and sticking to the end of this video, and I'll see you guys next time.